All right, good afternoon, everyone. We're in the last stretch of the day before the party begins. Thank you for coming. I'm pretty sure from the familiar faces I see, everybody knows exactly what CTA Special Services Planning is about, and you're just here to support our team here. So thank you. So yeah, we got a team of 3 individuals here that are going to tell us about how we plan, communicate, and execute special services. That is all from your ball games to your concerts to any other disruptions that might happen due to construction or anything else. So I'm not going to spend too much time on bios, but I'll do some brief introductions. On the planning side, we have our very own Horgan. He's the lead special services planner. He's been at CTA for almost 7 years, and he's been doing special events for about 2 years now, right? More?
3.
About three. Wow, time flies. He's responsible for designing the actual mini transit system within a transit system we had for DNC last year. That was a huge undertaking. And then he's going to talk to us a lot about how the special services planning goes into effect. Now, on the communication side, on the far end, we have Andrew Rosenthal. He's been with CTA for 3.5 years, and he's a publications representative. He's going to talk with us about how we communicate special services to the public. And then in the middle, we have Gerald Mohammed. Gerald is an Army veteran. He's been with CTA for 31 years at this point, and he's been a transportation manager in the bus service management department for about 5 years now. So without further ado, I'm going to give it away to our speakers.
All right. Thank you for the introduction, Demetrius. Let's see. Okay. Well, it goes without saying that Chicago is a world-class city and a major destination for special events. CTA bus and rail service is the best and most efficient way to transport event attendees at a large scale and is a major selling point when event organizers select cities for their events. Last year, on top of planning for the DNC, as Demetrius mentioned, CTA prepared over 70 unique service plans for special events, countless communication materials, as well as reroute, schedule, and service bulletins, in addition to dedicated considerable amount of workforce by staffing additional operators, supervisors, station staff, safety and security personnel, information specialists, the list goes on. Some notable events we prepare for include sporting events. For the Bears, we provide the Route 128 dedicated to getting passengers between Soldier Field and Union and Ogilvie stations on game days. At United Center, the Bulls and Blackhawks also have a special route on the number 19 for express post-event service for departures downtown. And then we also have supplemental service on the number 152 and Red Lines for Cubs and Wrigley Field events. Concerts and music festivals can range between 50 to 100,000 daily attendees. For Beyonce, Windy City Smokeout, Riot Fest, and Lollapalooza, we prepare extra service plans to transport many passengers efficiently. Races, parades, cultural events, and street fests often result in street closures, which requires CTA to prepare reroutes to safely and resourcefully avoid congestion. We need to adjust service for large-scale races and parades like the Bank of America Chicago Marathon, the Pride Parade, and St. Patrick's Day, as well as smaller-scale local neighborhood events like Do Division, Apple Fest, and Old Town Arts Fest, which is going on this weekend. The final category I'll mention of events we prepare for and communicate to passengers are related to construction outages. In order to modernize and maintain our rail infrastructure, we need to perform work on the tracks, which can result in small to large-scale impacts. These impacts can range from alerting passengers to prepare for extra travel time during a single track, where a rail line can only operate on one direction of track, all the way up to a line cut, where we completely close off a segment of the rail line between stations and provide a bus bridge. Passengers need to be informed on how to navigate these disruptions. Examples of these types of projects include RPM, which is nearing completion of its current phase, the Forest Park rebuild, which occurred about 2 years ago, and work regularly executed by our power and way maintenance and track maintenance departments. As I indicated earlier, The entire agency participates in executing special events, not to mention the coordination we do externally with city departments and event organizers. For the purpose of our presentation, we're going to review how CTA service planning, customer information, and bus service management departments oversee the special events planning process. We will go over in detail our roles and responsibilities, as well as project deliverables we produce to make the event and communication effort successful. To further emphasize this point, we're all going to use the 2024 Bank of America Chicago Marathon as an example or case study. So I'll start us off here with service planning. There are many considerations and variables used when deciding which events to provide extra service for. CTA's vehicle loading standards is one of the primary guiding influences. These standards call for passenger loads of 53 on a 40-foot standard bus, 79 on a 60-foot articulated bus, and 80 on our rail cars. The purpose of these standards is to provide a reasonable amount of comfort and mitigate crowding at the maximum loading points. The event location also plays a role in this process. It is important to identify existing service and schedule capacity available during the highest demand times. Additionally, we need to find space for bus passengers to board, as well as curb lanes for buses to stage and layover, which can be challenging at times where real estate is limited surrounding the event venue. A good example would be Blues Fest at Grant Park, or a good comparison would be Blues Fest at Grant Park and Riot Fest at Douglas Park. Grant Park is centrally located just east of a large amount of existing service. There are a dozen routes along Michigan Avenue and multiple rail stations with service on nearly every line in our system. This surplus of capacity, combined with the type of service demand we see during Blues Fest, provides an opportunity where we don't need to add supplemental service and can rely on our regularly scheduled service. Douglas Park, on the other hand, has a limited amount of existing service near Riot Fest's entry and exit gates. The California Pink Line station, which provides east-west service, is located just south of the park, and only one bus line, the number 94, provides north-south service just east of the park. This limited schedule capacity, combined with high passenger demand, where daily attendance can reach over 50,000, creates the need to add extra service. As a result, for this event, we added extra Pink Line runs as well as up to 20 buses north of Douglas Park to help mitigate crowding and transport passengers post-event, as well as maintain the loading standards. Another variable used for our decision-making process is measuring passenger demand and timing. Pre-event demand is typically very gradual and occurs over a longer span, as passengers have different preferences in terms of when they want to or need to arrive. Supplementing regular service with additional frequency is the best strategy for pre-event demand or any demand that occurs over a long span of time. This strategy creates opportunities for operator and run efficiency, allowing them to make multiple trips during their run. Post-event, usually the highest demand period we need to prepare for due to high volumes requiring service at the same time. So think about Lollapalooza when all 100,000 attendees are exiting the event at once. Usually, this is the best strategy for high demand post-event service, or usually the best strategy for high demand post-event service is staging buses or trains. The benefit of this method is that it allows a bus or train to be ready at the location with the full capacity of empty vehicles. And then the final variable I'll mention is coordinating with operations and maintenance on workforce and vehicle resources. For the most part, we try to schedule extra service from the closest garage or yard to the event with the intent of reducing pool or deadhead time. However, in cases where the garage or yards are overwhelmed and there's multiple extras being used from that location, we'll have to coordinate and identify where we can pull other operators from, which results in using multiple garages that are sometimes further away from the event location. All right, so once the considerations and high-level planning phase is complete, we develop a spec and training map to communicate the intentions of the service plan internally. The spec is the first step in the communication process and details key information such as the date, event location, expected attendance, route, garage origin, number of operators, vehicle type, headway, direction, timing, and the start and end point. After this is issued, at least 2 weeks in advance of the event, other departments use this information to prepare. Scheduling develops bulletins to provide specific details of the plan to managers, clerks, and operators at the garage or yard. Operations and maintenance recruits and secures operators and vehicles. Publications prepares alerts and signage as needed. And then bus service management, rail station management, and safety and security prepare their staffing plans. The training map provides directions on how operators need to pull out and return to the garage, stops and stations to serve, as well as the layover or lunch location they need to use. So the example here I have summarizes our plan for Saturday fireworks at Navy Pier, where we stage post-event service on the 29 and 66 after the show. So you can see we have the dates listed, as well as the timing. The show usually ends 10 minutes or 10:10, and then you can see the table there shows the number of buses we need, the garage, Chicago for 66, and state, or 103rd for State Street 29 bus. And then you can see the start and end points and the timing, and then we have the training map there that also summarizes the pull routings and layover locations. Outside of communicating internally, it is important to mention that we closely work externally with city agencies and other partners when developing our extra plans. Whether it's CDOT or Streets and Sanitation supporting our strip parking requests or for staging buses, event organizers sharing ticket sale origins, estimated attendance, and timing of pre-event ingress and post-event egress, as well as contractors who manage major construction projects. It is important we communicate openly and effectively to all succeed in serving the event. All right, moving on to our case study. The Bank of America Chicago Marathon attracts over 45,000 runners in addition to countless spectators. Last year, between 5 a.m. and 6 p.m., we had almost 400,000 boardings on our rail network. This is an increase compared to last year of 84,000 or 27%. Additionally, compared to the previous Sunday before the marathon, we saw an increase of 218,000 or 121% in boardings. And then in the map here, you can see our reroutes overlaid with the race course buffer in black. Over 30 routes system-wide along the segments are impacted during the race, which also adds demand to the rail network. This, combined with the high demand, compelled us to develop an extra plan to maintain connections for passengers, reduce impacts, and strategically add capacity where needed. All right, so we use data from the previous year to help measure passenger demand. The top table displays the max load point on each line and direction by half hour. We then divide this by the scheduled capacity for that same time, for that same direction and half hour, which would include the number of trips and car length. So then the bottom table summarizes the results of this calculation. Keeping in mind our vehicle loading standard of 80 passengers per rail car, you can see that many of the cells highlighted in red and orange are greater than our standard. This calculation helped us identify where we need to add service to the regular schedule. Focusing on the strategy used for this event, passenger demand is spread throughout the day as racers and spectators arrive for the start of the race at 7 a.m. and continue through the early afternoon as long as 2 p.m. This led us to create a frequency-based extra plan and add over 30 additional runs on multiple lines. So, looking at the results here and how the extra plan actually performed during the race last year, we added over 13 runs on the red line, calling for frequencies between 6 to 10 minutes during the highest demand periods. The top chart here shows the actual delivered frequencies compared to the bulletin extra frequency. So the orange line is the bulletined, and the blue bars are the actual delivered service. So anytime a blue bar is above the orange line, we didn't meet what we anticipated schedule-wise. And then the bottom chart displays the calculated actual APC compared to our standard. So the orange line here is a straight 80 passengers per car, and then the blue line is the blue bar graphs are the actual load per car for each half hour. Both of these charts summarize activity at Chicago and State Red Line northbound, which is the max loading point for the PM on the red line. So there's some explanation for us not meeting these bulletin frequencies and vehicle loading standards. At 8 a.m., there's criminal activity at North and Clybourne, which caused a 25-minute delay. So you can see right about 8:30 on the top graph, we're above the bulletin frequency, and it continued until 9 or 9:30, and then it caught back up between 9:30 and 10:30. And then at 3:30 p.m., there was a maintenance issue at 87th, which caused a 16-minute delay, which, as you can see, starting around 4 p.m., the bars in both graphs are higher than our metrics there. So obviously, in practice, things happen, and we can't always meet the schedule, so not much in our control there. And then for future recommendations, we're fortunate with our new pick compared to last year. This year, the red line is much more frequent, especially on the weekends. And then probably when we go back and do this for 2025, we'll continue our extra service plan past 4 p.m. because there was still high demand in the system at that time. With that, I'll pass it on to Andrew. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Evan. All right, everyone, let me get my water. My name is Andrew Rosenthal. I'm the publications representative in the CTA's Customer Information Department. Essentially, my job is to communicate how passengers can navigate our system when we have special events or construction. And if you live in Chicago, you would know we have a lot. We do this by creating customer alerts, which you see on the left. Typically, a customer alert will detail alternative service. We'll say what the reroute is. We'll create a map of the reroute. This information will get published on our website. We'll print flyers and signs. A lot of times on the bus, for our bus alerts, they'll get printed on waterproof paper or weatherproof paper. They'll get posted at each individual bus stop along the reroute. So, for example, on the Mother's Day extravaganza on the right, we had a reroute between Chicago and Laramie and Chicago and Cicero. And that sign would have been posted at every single bus stop east and west on Chicago, each 66 bus stop. We differentiate our strategy depending on if it's a planned reroute or an unplanned reroute. We obviously have way more time to prepare for a planned reroute than we would for an unplanned reroute. In the short-term reroutes, so if there's a water main break on Foster, that would get distributed online. The information would get coordinated between BSM and our CTA Control Center communications coordinators, and they will post that information as soon as they get that. All the time, an alert will include the route that is impacted, the date and the time span. Sometimes we don't know when it's going to end, so we will use until further notice or completion. Alternative services, an explanation for the reroute, and we've also been using QR code now, and that will link to the website. So if the reroute ends before we were planning on it to end, we can expire that alert on the website. So when the customer's in the field, they would scan the QR code and they would see that the reroute is over. So it builds in some flexibility if humans can't respond to something that ended before we can change online. Our alert text is communicated through a lot of different digital channels through APIs. This is on State Street, looking north at State and Lake, just under the station. I took this picture when we had about 10 buses being rerouted for the Chicago Christmas tree lighting ceremony. And on the right, I was trying to take the 70 bus from Clark and Division to Division and Western, and Google Maps made sure to tell me that we had a reroute for the Do Division Street Festival. For unplanned reroutes, we use what we call the fill-in-the-blank customer alerts. We printed at one point a lot of these that we gave to our bus service management supervisors to put in their detail cars. So when they have something that comes up in the field, they would use a Sharpie and put the route that's impacted and tape that to the stop that's impacted. Depending on the situation, will depend. The other day I noticed on Foster, there was scaffolding that was impacting our ability to board buses on one side of the intersection. So the supervisor used the temporary bus stop to direct passengers to the near side. And if we have an unplanned rail bridge, or unplanned rail line cut, we'll use the one on the far right. If, let's say, the blue line is down between two stations, this sign would tell people where to board on Milwaukee Avenue. So for line cuts, we'll typically use two different types of customer alerts. We have a customer alert on the right that shows basically a zoomed-in version of the CTA map for the stations that are impacted. We'll take that information and we'll cut it in half for a turnstile alert that we will tape on our, as you're tapping in your CTA venture card, you'll see that alert and would tell you, hey, there's a line cut happening this Friday. We try and get this information up 2 weeks in advance for whenever possible. We'll also include sandwich boards, which basically say, hey, read this before you enter the station. In the middle, a coroplast sign showing you where you would board the bus along the line cut. And then on the right, this time we had the pink line being rerouted from the inner loop, which runs clockwise, to the outer loop, which runs counterclockwise. And this sign was intended to inform passengers to not pay to enter the station on the wrong side. For major special events, an event in Grant Park might impact 100 different bus stops and 20 different bus lines. And what we started to notice over the years was that the same information was being posted. So if we had 9 bus routes that serve one stop on Michigan Avenue, we were posting 9 iterations of a customer alert on a bus stop poll. And as a customer, you would have to sift through that bus stop poll and find your route if you're looking for the 3 bus. So we combined that into the one on the left, which has an array of route badges, which is exactly how it would look like on the CTA bus stop sign and on our website. That has a generic description of what streets are closed and where the buses are boarding. In this case, for Lollapalooza, we were boarding on State Street. It is a QR code to a landing page, which we can update with as much information as we possibly can fit on a website, which is infinite. And that you would click on it, depending on your route and depending on the day, the website will direct you to a page on the right, which includes the map and the customer alert text that you would see on the paper alert. For the marathon, that is by far the CTA's largest special event reroute that we could possibly have. It impacts more than 30 routes and over 1,400 bus stops. We created a geographic general alert that you see on the top. That alert was posted in each of 1,900 buses themselves in the windows behind the driver. Our bus maintenance staff posts that alert overnight. And here we weren't expecting people to take a magnifying glass and zoom in on the map and find where their bus line is and where that is in relation to the race course. However, what we were trying to communicate was that depending on where you are on the course will depend on when we can restore bus service to that area of the race. So that differed, because the race goes north and then it goes back south. So if it ended earlier, what we were trying to do is communicate to customers that on the north side, the race might end earlier and you can use our buses sooner. And then in the field, we used 4 iterations of a bus alert. I'm going to highlight the one on the left, which is the one we used for the west side. In that case, it impacted 8 buses in that general area. We explained the streets that were impacted, which in that case were any bus stop between Western, Madison, Halsted, and 18th. And we were directing passengers, if they saw that sign, to board at the pink line or the blue line. So filtering by location is very helpful because this is how bus service management designs the reroutes for the marathon as well, by sending the buses to the rail station to have the passenger transfer on into the system and to to wherever they're going. I like to joke that we can go over the race, we can go under the race, we just can't go through the race. So the results, what we did is we put a UTM tracker on the QR code to track how many people were physically scanning the codes in the field. Unfortunately, we don't have a camera and every customer alert to know how many people are looking at it. But of the 13,000 page views, 2,600 were able to come to our website by scanning the QR code, which we considered pretty successful for our first year of doing this with very limited instructions. I like to think myself personally that people have been more accustomed to scanning a QR code during the COVID pandemic, that, if you're at a restaurant, if you scan a QR code, you would go to a website. This could be even more successful next year. We also put the QR code on the flyer that we were distributing to people at the Avid Health and Fitness Expo that included the nearest CTA rail station in relation to the course. And we've continued doing this for other major special events like the DNC, where we included a QR code on a customer alert that was distributed system-wide, and basically telling people to sign up for our text and email customer alerts. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Gerald Muhammad with Bus Service Management.
Thank you. I'm Gerald Muhammad with Chicago Transit Authority. I've been in bus service management for the last 7 years, transportation manager as well for 5 years. Complete total 31 years, bus operator as well, instructor, teaching the drivers how to drive, and it's been a journey. Okay, we're gonna get into bus service management. Roughly, my department has 13 managers, including the general manager, 3 senior managers, and bus service managers. We have roughly 100, I wanna say right at this time, 100 to 110 supervisors. And that's including the pool. The pool supervisors are those bus operators that's being transitioned to become supervisors that we have to develop and give them a skill set. Okay. In bus service management, we are responsible for service. We're responsible for making sure that service is provided in a consistent manner. Sometimes the headway gets a little large, sometimes it gets a little small, but we try to mitigate that headway. We check the adherence of the schedules to adjust, and I left my glasses in the car, so pardon me. And to restore the disruptive services. We observe the operating practices of the operators to make sure that they doing what they're supposed to be doing, and monitor the street conditions, because as you know, in the city of Chicago, we have a construction season, which is the summer. So there's a lot of construction that's going on, and sometimes those constructions projects are emergencies, so we have to adjust. The supervisors are in the street. They assist the operators and various support employees, especially the police, fire department, and OMC, and the customers in general, and the public. We remain radio communications. I know you guys saw me come in with the radio, so we constantly on the radio going back and forth. It's a little staticky, but after a while, your ear is trained to understand what's being said. And we do that with the Power Control Center. They relay all of the events or the things that's pertinent to us so we can go and recover the things that need to be done. We have a lot of rescue and recovery missions, and we also provide the service at the same time. So sometimes when you see the supervisor pulled over with a bus with the lights on flashing. It's a rescue and recovery mission. And he's also trying to adjust the schedule of the street with the buses that's coming behind him because that particular bus is out of service. So he has to adjust the street. The supervisors, they have to prepare a certain amount of paperwork. Those are what we call reports. They service checks, their restroom checks, their observations, and different various reports of that manner, plus a restoration log where to show their work or what they done for that day. Or if an event occurs or they get an event, they have to show what they did with the remaining of those buses or what they did with that particular bus after it has been cleared. The operators, when they monitoring the authorities' vehicle and equipment, they have to perform other duties as assigned. Now, supervisors, my supervisors, I love them because they work for me. They're the eyes and ears of management. They have 66 duties and responsibilities, 66. And they also have 33 duties as assigned that they have to perform on a daily basis. Okay, our daily tasks, the supervisor staffs at time points, so we have different time points throughout the city where a bus should be at that certain time point at that particular time. However, if they do not reach that particular time, we have to increase the headway or decrease the headway. So in our computers, it may read that they're late, but once we increase the headway or we get a headway where we are comfortable with a 10 or 12 minute headway, they are always on time. So the headway makes them on time. So you have maybe 10 buses going in one direction north at 12 minutes apart, and you may have another one coming the opposite way at 12 minutes apart. And even though they may be late, that is their headway, they are on time to us. However, it may read not on time to the computer or the general system or the stats. And the on-timeness is for the public because the public will view them as the bus was there in 12 minutes. I waited 12 minutes, that bus was there in 12 minutes, although it'll be reading different from us for our stats. We have a lot of unplanned disruptions and emergency road closures, as I was saying, and police activity and unofficial planned events like what's happening now in the city, which is, we kind of got out of control the first day, but we maintained it. And at that time, when that happened, it was only two managers. It was me and myself, and I may have 4 supervisors controlling that whole event with probably about 50,000 people. And we were adjusting the streets, and sometimes we have to suspend service and direct everything to our train line. So our train line play a very intricate part of our transportation because that's the hub to getting people north, south, east, and west, southwest, and northwest, the train hub. So sometimes when things happen inside the city, we have to suspend, but we get shuttles to get our people to the train lines to get them out. So like he said, you're going over or you're going under. You can't go through. We create rail shuttles for emergency line cuts. And for instance, when the train has an issue or something happened on the rail, for instance, yesterday we had a cracked rail on the red line at North Avenue in Clybourne. We had to create a rail shuttle from Fullerton to Staten Lake on the red line. So once that happened, we grab buses from the routes, we adjust the routes so that we still provide service on the routes, and then we create a rail shuttle to get the people to those particular stations that the train would normally exit and alight them on. I'm going through kind of quickly because it's a lot that the supervisors do and that we are in control of. We coordinate with the control center and bus operations in the garage level. So they have to provide the manpower of the operators in order for us to make things work. So they have to create extra lists and bring extra manpower in for certain events so that these things can come to fruition. Let me go to that next slide. I'm on that one. I might need my glasses. Okay. So at these planned events, we do have, we identify stations and layover points, and we post signs and alerts that's created by publications. So when they create those alerts, our supervisors have to post those alerts. So on any given route, if the route is 6 to 7 miles long, the supervisors post those alerts on every service stop throughout the city. I forgot the number of service stops that we actually have, but every service stop has to have that alert. They have to post it, and once the event is over, they have to take them down, you know. And we position our buses strategically to reduce the delay for the on-time service. So at any given event, we have reroutes. At times, we have to, it's kind of difficult to explain because so much goes on in the city. You have to pull from another route because the bus and the reroute will get trapped up. So our supervisors go out and they ride the route, and then they report back to us that, okay, our buses can go down this street. Our buses can safely make this turn. They can safely make that turn. And if they can't, then we have to go another route. And sometimes it'll push the route further away from where the people are used to going and to bring them back. So the city of Chicago is a very, very unique city. And some of the streets are very, very unique. So you have to come up with, you have to be kind of crafty when you're dealing with the reroutes in the streets. We hold traffic in roadways, for instance, like the United Center, or when they have the fireworks, and at the end of the year for Navy Pier, we have our buses staged the opposite way sometimes, and we have to hold the traffic in order to get the buses out. We have the 124s, the 66s, the 29 states, and what other bus we have? The 65, and I believe we have the 2. No, the 2 doesn't run that time of night. There's the 124 is going to Union Station. So those buses, we might have 40 buses on one route, particular route. And we have to bring barricades to stop the people or to guide the people from being in the path of the bus, because what we don't want is a bus person accident. Safety is our number one priority. So we hold the passengers, we load them, and then we let the buses go out. We create bulletins for every line cut, every reroute, everything that's going to impact service, we create a bulletin. That's what the senior managers and the managers do in the garage. So once we get the information, then we create these bulletins that we give to the bus operations, who gives to the bus operators. So they understand on a daily basis before they begin their work, this is what's happening. So when they pull out the garage or they make a relief on the street, they know that, hey, when I get to this point, I have to turn here, turn there, and we try to service the people or let them off, what's convenient for them. We have 3 different regions that's broken down in bus service management. We have a north region, which handles basically from North Avenue all the way north. Then we have from North Avenue to Cermak is the central region, which handles from the lake all the way to Harlem. And then from the south region is from Cermak to 137th Street, from the lake all the way west. So those are the regions that we handle, and each region is broke down into zones and zones and districts for the supervisor. They have a K number a K letter and a call number where they assign so many routes per region that the buses will be traveling through their region. So let me go to the next slide. Okay. The supervisors, they assignments, and I know it's kind of redundant because all our emphasis is on the supervisors because, like I said, those are our eyes and ears. They really work for us, and they work diligently for us. They instruct the operators on the reroutes when the operators are not familiar with the reroutes because, as you know, we have hired a lot of new people, and they're not familiar with the streets of the city of Chicago, and they starting to learn that it's a lot to Chicago and knowing the streets, and you have to know where you're going, and you have to know the streets in order to travel through it. The reroutes, and then they restore the service according, when it's necessary according to what's going on. They inform the customers when they board and alighting what's happening at this point, because we have a lot of Patriot customers in the city of Chicago that rides every day, and they really need to know what's happening. We have roughly at a station assigned different locations. The CTA requires us to wear safety vests. That's why I'm in with my vest on every time we're in the street so we can be identified. The safety vest is to stop operators from running us over because we be in unique situations. Sometimes we have to go down into the rail tunnels or on the rail stations on the platforms, depending on the situation that's going on. I'm a little nervous, so pardon me. Basically, we're going to get into the race course for the Bank of America Marathon. Now, this is very unique because the race course starts in the loop and it goes all the way north. And as the racers are passing certain locations or the tail end of the race past a location, we communicate with OMEC to open up the streets so our routes can get through. Before that, we have a line cut, and then we'll have a shuttle on the east end where the buses can shuttle the people to the line cut in order to get them east and west, and then north and south on certain streets when the race course goes west and comes down like over by Damien and comes down south to come back into the loop. So as the end of the race is going through, they open up the streets, and then we start getting the streets back, and we start letting the buses go through. And that's what the length of a race takes, you know what I'm saying? So in the morning, we're out there maybe about 4 o'clock in the morning, and we don't end our day to 7, 8 o'clock when we restored all the service and we got all the streets back and they returned to normal. Do you guys have any questions for BSM? I may have missed a few things.
Gerald.
Hi, thank you so much for your presentation. You alluded to it a little earlier, but I'm curious how you plan, right, for the protest tomorrow, right? It's not a regularly scheduled event like the marathon or a Cubs game, right? Because we kind of know that there's going to be a protest tomorrow for the last few weeks. So I'm curious, kind of in those types of situations, how you plan for that when it's, especially like the marathon, right? It's moving, it's not always predictable. So I'm curious if you can just speak a little more to that. Thanks.
Okay, so what's happening, especially for tomorrow, the protest, the first day, like I said, we got caught. It was me and another manager, and I had 3 supervisors. So by us understanding the loop and understanding the movement, one of us was at the head of the protest, and then we have one at the tail. But strategically, people get strategic. I was in the military, so you understand how strategy works. They broke off into 3 different groups. And then once they broke off, it became a little chaotic. So planning for tomorrow, we're going to have another 6 to 8 supervisors stationed north of Wacker, in the middle, maybe around Washington State, and then on the south end, Congress. So they have a box that they work out of. And they boxes generally around the Federal Plaza and City Hall or Daily Plaza. And then they'll move in that manner. So when we set our supervisors up to have eyes on them, when they move east, we'll take all our service and divert it west from the top. And then when they move back west, we'll take all our service and divert it back east from the top, and so on and so forth. So hopefully we don't have to suspend anything. And being a Saturday, if it gets out of hand where the buses was trapped because they did start vandalizing some of our equipment, hopefully it doesn't come to that, And that's the only reason we had to suspend it, because the equipment would have been vandalized to the point where we couldn't provide schedule,
Do you guys also plan for extra rail service as well to come on days like tomorrow as well, or that's something?
Well, the planning department and the rail side, they plan for that. And what we do, if things get a little out of hand, we'll pull buses from different routes, and then we'll restore the service on the street or get a headway, and we can pull anywhere from 10 to 12 buses, and then we can put them in circulation if we need a shuttle to get the people where they need to be.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi.
Hi.
So this is more of a planning question. So I guess, and I actually have 2 questions.
Okay.
So the first one is, I guess, what are the service standards that you use for some of these specialty events? In terms of like the level of service that you're going to provide. And I'm thinking about this from my perspective as a passenger. It's the end of a Cubs game or Riot Fest or whatever, and sometimes it's over and I go and I get right back on the train, and it seems you guys clearly have planned for the right amount of service and have added that extra service. Other times it's like everything seems screwed up, and there are people around me asking like, why? How did CTA screw this up? Why don't they have more trains here? So like, is that a planning? Is that always? Is there like a level like, oh well, we always plan for people to not wait more than an extra amount of time, and anything beyond that, something happened like you were showing with your graph of like, oh, here was a criminal incident, here was a maintenance issue, that kind of thing.
Yeah, something like that. We do all the planning in the office, but once it gets out on the street, an operator calls off or a major disruption happens on the network. Those things are sort of out of our control. But for like the Cubs, for example, we do have, like I mentioned, the 80 passengers per car, and then especially for post-event, we try and reduce wait times make them as quick as possible. But for example, when there are delays, I don't want to put all of the responsibility on operations, but typically it's something that happened either an emergency or delay or disruption, or there was some sort of workforce or staffing issue surrounding it. But we always put out bulletins and plan back at the office and review all the loading for all these events and under a microscope, and then so we put it all out there. But then obviously once it's there, things can
Everybody has a
happen.
plan until you get punched in the face.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
And certainly
And-
everything when you're pushing your system to the limit, one little thing goes wrong and then it cascades. I would imagine.
Yes, and the other thing I'll mention, the benefit of special events is they usually occur during off-peak hours, so there's more resources in terms of vehicles and workforce. So weekends and nights are, especially a good environment to get more equipment and operaters.
Cool. And my second question, if I may, is, and so who pays for this? Is there a, do the people putting on the events, are they required to kick in for this? Do does the fact that you're, if you have a full bus, well, then it pays for itself, or, how's kind of all that work?
Yes, so we do have budget codes and charge codes, and we budget these events out in advance, usually using the previous year, the operating hours and miles for the vehicles and things like that. And like you mentioned, they're very productive, especially post-event. You're loading up full buses and trains, in a very quick manner. It's a good use of our resources. You have an empty bus pull up and it's completely full and pulls away, and you're just collecting the revenue there. So yeah.
And if I may add, generally at planned events, we try to we have enough service to have have everyone out within an hour and a half. So basically, we looking at it in that respective too, because of a CBD and large crowds in certain areas where they deem a safety concern. So within an hour and a half, we try to load as many people as we can and get them out the area.
Piggyback on that. Hi, I work for CTA as well. Good job, guys. So I work on the construction department, and so when we are doing our estimates for the projects, if we know we're going to be impacting bus or rail operations, then we work with them and we figure out, okay, like, are we going to need a line cut? Are we going to need to, have extra bus service or whatever? And then we will get an estimate for that, and then the project will pay for that, right? So. Absolutely. Yes, we do. So, because that was one of the things you talked about, was just the construction impacts as well that you guys work with us for.
Definitely, yeah. And if you're familiar, there's a lot of back and forth and strategizing in terms of how to mitigate the passenger impacts, as well as from a cost and budget perspective, figure out the best solution when executing these major rail construction projects.
Hey, Harry Fleming from AECOM. I had a question. You alluded to it before about weekday versus weekend, or peak versus off-peak. How, particularly I'd imagine for the sort of weekday peak events, Lollapalooza, Thursday, Friday, are you putting on special, you talk about supplementing services, are you putting on, like, how constrained is that by the existing sort of peak scheduling fleet? And how do you manage that?
So in terms of scheduling and planning for it, it's a supplement or addition to our regular schedule. So, in our calculation, we identify how much capacity is available, like during the peak. Like you're referencing like Thursday evening during Lollapalooza, or Friday when, we have on the red line regular commuters going northbound, and then we'll have event attendees coming in southbound, and it creates more passengers during the peak service. So we add extra runs to help supplement and maintain the 80 passengers per car.
And are you constrained by like your rolling stock and your fleet size there? Because I'd imagine obviously during peak, ideally all the rolling stock and buses are out on the network. Do you have issues with that?
Typically no, but yeah, we do have we working with maintenance and operations well in advance, they can recruit and prepare the vehicles, so we give them enough advance notice that they can prepare what they need to on their end. But yeah, and we also do have specific ratio for vehicles we maintain, especially even during the peak. We do have some in reserve available in case of emergencies.
If I can add to that, just because I'm CTA service planning as well. So our regular service includes something that we call the peak vehicle requirement for buses and the peak car requirement for rail. Essentially, there's always some cushion there to accommodate any maintenance issues that might come. But for special events like that, there's always some additional vehicles that are available to use.
Plus, we have mobile repairmen in each region, and on those days, it may be more assigned to each region. So if we have an issue, they can immediately go to the point where it is and correct it and put the vehicle back in service.
How many during Lala, how many extra runs do you guys do for the bus routes? Just give some scale for these guys.
For bus, there's not as many, or would you?
Generally, in the emails that I see, We may have, in the morning time, we may have anywhere between 20 to 40, and then in the evening, maybe about 20 to 40, because they have to come out in increments and sections, because we still have to meet the obligations of the labor relations and the 13-hour work rule.
DNC was crazy, though.
Yes, DNC was a little different, and most of the operators that was assigned to those particular buses, they was assigned with the bus and the LEO, a law enforcement officer, and the mobile trucks. Everybody had to have credentials and go through security checks to be there, and the buses were staged at that location, and operators were transported back to the garage, and then they would have to go through the security check again the next day, and it was the same operators.
Hey, is it possible for you to resolve bus bunching during the route instead of having sometimes like 5 buses going all the way up to the end of the route?
Good question.
Yeah.
I knew that question was coming. To be very honest with you, right now it's impossible to prevent bus bunching. That's in any city, due to we have streetscape projects and the reduction of lanes. And then you have to understand that when the bus gets to a certain stop, if you're loading 40, 50 people, the bus behind is not loading 40, 50, it's steady coming. It's gonna keep coming. Okay, now you get to a traffic jam, say you have a turned over vehicle in the middle of the intersection. The buses are still coming until they get to that point. And then that's when we have to adjust the schedule. That's why I say the headway is the most important part. And that's what we look at, the headway. We have to give them a headway. But the bus bunching sometimes is unavoidable because of the design of the street and the infrastructure of whatever particular city you are in. You know, when those things happen, the bus, for instance, I'm gonna give you a brief synopsis of a bus operator, because I used to teach them. You have to have a cushion. You got 6 positions of a bus. Okay, 6 positions. Not 1, 2, 3, 4, but 6. And then you have to have 3 to 5 feet clearance at all times around the bus. And you have to keep in mind, for every 10 miles per hour a bus travels, it needs a bus length and a half to come to a smooth and complete stop. So if the operators are actually practicing that, it's virtually impossible. You know, because safety is, like I said, is a priority. And then you don't want the people on the bus, you know, going back and forth because, you know, you hit your head on a pole, you may never return from that. That's, you know, so we have to practice the safety mechanism first, and then, you know, try to adjust the street as we go along and stretch out the street. And then we even yesterday I started setting up shuttles in different parts of the route to circulate buses to go back and forth from a certain point, although we still have the live service going, in order just to move the people during their peak hours.
Okay, we're gonna wrap this up here. We're at after 4:15. Thank you so much for coming, and congratulations to our